Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is John Fillipi. John, many years ago you were born. How many?
81.
81. When were you born? What day and what month and all of that?
April the 20th, 1918.
1918. April 20th is also Adolf Hitler's birthday, you know.
Tell me about it. I've been told that many times.
But, of course, you're completely different from Adolf Hitler. Where were you born in Wadsworth? I mean, probably not in the hospital, were you?
Down there in State Street.
Right on State Street. Tell us exactly where and then geographically where.
Well, it was just before you get to the where the railroad used to cross
State Street,
94. Yeah.
Which is now 57, isn't it?
Now 57.
Right, 57. And what was the outside of the house like?
Well, it had a porch from the back of the house along the whole right side of the house, facing the house, and then across the front of it.
That's right. And we're going to be talking about that porch pretty soon because I'm going to remind you about your father making fishing nets on that porch. Tell us who your parents were and who your siblings were.
Well, my mother was Anna.
Anna what?
Strum. That was her maiden name.
And spell Strum for us.
S-C-H-R-A-M.
S-C-H-R-A-M.
Yeah.
And where was she born?
She was born overseas, but I don't know, it must have been in Austria-Hungary, but they was in the German sector of it.
The German sector of
Yeah.
it. And what about your father? His name was?
Nicholas.
Nick, right.
Yeah.
And Nick the fisherman.
Fisherman Nick.
That's right. Fisherman Nick, he fished all the time. And where was he born?
He was born over there too.
Same place that your mother was born?
Well, no, it was in different
towns?
Different towns.
When were your parents born? 18?
Dad was 1879, I'm pretty sure.
1879.
Yeah.
And your mother probably right around that time.
Well,
too.
she was about let's see, 10, 11 years younger than me.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
she's born then close to 1890 or something
Yeah.
like that. Now, both your parents are gone.
Oh, yeah.
And they would be well over.
Yeah, well over 100.
120 years, you bet. Well over 120 years old or better. Now, John, what about your siblings? And who's the oldest in your family?
My sister Margaret.
Right. Margaret is the oldest. And how old is she and where is she now?
She's buried. She's deceased.
Yes. She died quite a few years ago, as a matter of fact.
No, it's just only here just lately.
When did she die?
About 2 years ago.
Oh, it was
Mary. Mary was the one, yeah.
Okay, and Mary died many years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Margaret was living in Wadsworth?
No, she was living in Doylestown.
Doylestown,
and then she went into the nursing home.
Nursing home.
Yeah.
Did she marry a Wadsworth boy?
Yeah, Andy Bereni.
Andy Bereni,
Yeah.
right. I'm going to hear about the Berenis too, because we haven't had that name come up yet. And then you were born in 1918.
Now, I had a brother before me.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Stevie.
But he's not...
He was deceased. He died during the...
Spanish?
No, during the flu.
Flu epidemic, the Spanish flu in 1918. Probably just about the time
1919 is when he passed away.
Okay, just about the time that you never knew him then, really.
No.
Stevie. And then you were born 1918.
Yeah.
Now, was your father in this?
Well, you get Mary. Mary was before Stevie.
Oh, that's right. Okay, Mary. Mary was born
before Stevie.
Before Stevie. And Mary died?
Well, it's been 12, 14, about 16 years.
16 years ago. I knew it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Then Margaret died only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And what about, and whom did Mary marry?
Johnny Heim from Barberton.
Barberton. Johnny Heim.
Heim.
H-E-I-M. H-E-I-M from Barberton.
Yeah.
And then you were born.
Then I was
Then you was born. Then you were born, that's right. And who followed you then?
My brother Louis.
Who just died.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually just you and Margaret are you just...
I'm the Lone Ranger.
You're the only
now.
one, you're the Lone Ranger now, that's right,
I'm the
exactly.
last one.
Wow. Tell us about your growing up days down there on State Street. There was quite a bit of activity behind your house in terms of factories and things like that. What do you remember about the very early days of your growing up in terms particularly of the salt works? The Wadsworth salt, which is not incidentally Ohio salt.
No.
Not related at all.
No, Chippewa salt.
Chippewa salt, right.
Ohio's saltiest salt.
That's right.
And Matter of fact, I was 10 years old when it burnt down.
So
1928.
1920. Do you remember this fire?
You better believe I remember that.
How about you describing it? Because we've had several people describe it, and they've seen it from everywhere from the top of Overlook School, where that is right now, all the way from, these were little kids, obviously, and who are now adults and have related the story. And 60, 70 years have gone by, 71 years have gone by, so a lot of things have slipped our memory. So what we're trying to do is get as many of the pictures that people had in those days.
Well,
so tell us what you remember.
When it burnt down, our bedroom, well, we had a window to the west of the house. And it was so bright that we thought it was daylight.
Daylight.
And we jumped out of bed and hear this big ball of fire out there. I mean, it was big, because it was really growing fast.
Was it at night, obviously?
Yeah.
And what do you remember about it? Tell us as many things as you can possibly remember about that.
Before it burnt down, there used to be, they had what they called a hooper shop.
Tell us about the hooper shop. We have not had anyone tell us about the hooper shop, and that's extremely important in the South.
Yeah, well, they was making barrels, wooden barrels, to put the salt in.
Excuse me. First of all, tell us what hoopers are.
Well, the round rims on the barrels.
Right, the barrel hoops.
Yeah.
Most people have not even seen a barrel now, but years ago, many things were shipped in barrels.
Shipped in barrels.
Why?
Well, it was the only way they had to do it. Either that or they had it in bags.
And one of the reasons for barrels, first of all, they're made out of oak, usually, or ash, and they could roll them, and they could tip them and so forth, because the barrel...
What they had, where the hooper shop was, they had like a rail down there, and the barrels would come out of the hooper shop, come down into the salt building, where the dryers were, and then they'd fill them with salt.
Tell us where the hooper shop was geographically. I mean, if you can tell us, like it was a half-mile west of Main Street. Is that accurate? Not quite.
Not quite that far. About a quarter of a mile.
Quarter of a mile west of a state of Main Street.
Or better yet, we're
Rainbow.
no, it wasn't Rainbow Street. That was
Mill
Road. Used
Road.
To come out. Well, it was down 2 blocks from there.
Okay, so Mill Road is approximately about 1,000 feet from Main Street, right?
Yeah.
Mill Road is that one that goes over the railroad tracks and goes down into...
And it used to go up along between the match company, alongside of there.
And it was not really a road.
Yeah, it was a road.
I mean, not a road as we see it today.
No, not a designated road, because the match company went and put a fence up there.
Yeah, and it was just kind of a cinder path.
Yeah, that's all it was. The biggest part of it was all cinder path.
Probably so. And, cinders aren't very good because they disintegrate, but they had a lot of cinders, and that's what they put on there. What, and from State Street, it was what, 500 feet, 1,000, what?
Well, 500 feet.
500 feet. So we're approximately a quarter of a mile from Main Street and approximately a quarter of a mile, 1,000 feet from State Street, and that was the hooper shop.
Yeah.
Who worked in the hooper shop? Do you remember? How many people were there?
Oh, there were a lot of people worked there in the salt works. There was about 1,300 people worked there.
1,300 people, that's right. When it burned down, 1,300 people, what?
Out of work.
Out of work.
Yeah.
And no place to go. That's right. Tell us, did you ever go down to the hooper shop or to the salt?
I went down into the salt works and get water down there. They used to have spring water come up.
Yes.
And they'd let us go down there, and we'd take a jug full and get cold water and bring it home.
Good water.
Oh, wonderful water.
Spring water. Tell us what you remember about the people, and do you remember any of the people who worked in the hooper shop and in the salt works?
Oh, I used to remember, there was quite a few of them I used to remember. I don't remember them now. Matter of fact, there was some colored folks that were down there, and I can't remember their names. They used to go work down there. We sit out on the porch and was watching the people, and we'd all talk to all of them, but hey, this is how many years ago now?
Well, 70
Yeah.
80 years ago,
So,
75 years ago, that's right. The Afro-American families you're probably talking about were probably the Dancies, would it not?
Well, I imagine it could have been the Dances. It could have been some of them up on Mill Street.
Well, Dancy's live on Mill.
Yeah.
And Rivers, not Rivers.
No, Rivers was down on State Street.
Yeah. and Larkin's on Water Street,
Yeah,
and Early's,
yeah.
and did they work there?
The Early's worked at the match
shop,
company,
yes.
but he didn't work down there.
Yeah.
But these were the older folks, I mean, that was working down there.
The old ones.
Yeah.
How about Mr. Mills himself, Grandpa Mills?
He could have been there,
Yeah, 'cause
yes.
he's an old man, worked at the brickyard too. Tell us how your vision is or was when you went into the salt to get the salt works, I guess we called it at that time, to get the water.
Well, we used to go down in off of Mill Road, and they had a place to walk in there through the gate to go down there. And then there was there was a big tank down there that they had where the water was coming out, and you just put your jug under there and fill it up and go away with it.
You didn't worry about OSHA problems or things like that?
No.
You just went down there and
Yeah.
got it, and probably was not even sterilized or anything else, was it, the water?
It was sterilized right down our...
Right down your throat.
Right down the throat.
What about the salt works itself? Do you remember anything about that?
Yes, right just on the other side of Mill Road was the shop where the salt brine used to come out of the salt tanks where they boiled the water to get the salt, and then the brine was put right alongside right along 94, and it would come out and it formed just like a stone wall. I mean, and then they'd have to take dynamite caps to dynamite the salt down, and then they'd take it from there over into where they dry in the dryers.
To purify it.
Well, not only purify it, but dry it out and pulverize it.
Do you remember the dynamite caps going off?
Oh yes, oh yes.
How often did that happen?
Oh, quite a few times in a day.
And were they big caps or just quarters?
Just small ones.
Small ones, but it blew the place
But
up.
it blew the salt down because, see, it was wet and it would form and
Oh yeah, it becomes just
real hard.
on concrete. Now, John, they didn't have power shovels and things like that to pick
Oh
up.
yeah, they had power shovels. And when they had the buggies that they used to have, they had the buggies where the door would open in the front of it, and the men would have to lift up the handles on it, and they were only two-wheelers.
Wow.
I mean, they had to know how to handle them, and they took them. There was a railroad spur that went in between the two buildings where they put it in the dryers, and they had to go across. They have a railroad car sitting there, and they just have planks or steel metal plates, and they'd go across there, and then they take it in the dryer and they dump it in there, and then after it was going through there, then it would go through where they heated it and so forth, so that it wouldn't stick again. And then they had the women working up there, and they was putting them in sacks. They was 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 25-pound sacks. And they also had the barrels.
I heard you say the word Chippewa a little while ago. What was Chippewa? Chippewa is the name of the salt?
Yeah, it was Indian. They had the Chippewa Indians, see?
And then that was the Chippewa salt.
Chippewa salt.
And now, we don't want to miss one little tidbit of the salt works here. Going back to the fire, how long did the fire last? And what time did it start, do you think?
Oh, it must have started late at night. It must have been 11, 12 o'clock, something like that.
According to some of the other people, it was 11 o'clock, yes. And what do you remember about the fire engines coming down?
Well, they had fire engines from all over. There was, I think there was 9 or 10 fire companies there. From Seville, Chippewa Lake, Creston, Sterling, any place that had one, they all was there fighting the fires.
Didn't do any good, though.
Oh, no. No, they was just trying to keep it down because the embers were flying so far away. As a matter of fact, they found them as far as Copley.
Wow.
Yeah, it took them up in the air that high.
Well, I guess it would.
Well, the wind was coming from the west, see? And it was just taking them right up in the air. It just looked like fireworks up there.
Oh, my heavens. Was it frightening or was it exciting?
It was frightening because, see, they had to put water. They put water on our houses, sprayed our houses with water so they wouldn't catch a fire.
Where'd they get all the water from? The pond?
I don't know where they got it from, but they got it somewhere.
Yeah, because there certainly wouldn't have been that much water in the pond.
Well, see, they used the match company pond up there. They used water from there. They had fire trucks setting up in there so that they could, Well, matter of fact, the orchard, Mat Shop Orchard, and where the wooden barns were up there, see, they had to keep them watered down too.
See, now, we people, we talk about the barns, the wooden barns, and the Mat Shop Orchard, and there are people in Wadsworth who have never heard of the barns nor the Mat Shop Orchard. How about telling us where the Mat Shop Orchard was and the barns, and telling us as much about that as you can remember? And I would know that you were out there during the day getting those apples.
No, not only apples.
What else?
We knew every tree in that orchard, where the plums were, the cherries were.
Why did they call it the Mat Shop Orchard?
Because it was in their property.
But did they
Oh
spread?
yeah, they picked them. Yeah, well, matter of fact, when I worked at the Mat Shop in the yard gang, we used to go out there and pick apples and pick peaches, whatever they had to.
Where was it from where the Mat Shop buildings are right now?
Well, it was back of the Mat Shop buildings.
It's to the west and a little bit to the north, just a little bit to the north.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, it run from, the orchard was from Mill Street all the way around. It was,
To Mill Road.
Huh?
To Mill Road,
Yeah,
because Mill Street is in Wadsworth.
yeah.
All the way around to Grandview,
Grandview.
and all the way up to, what, Virginia?
No, it was from Mill Street.
Yeah.
Mill Street, not Mill Road, Mill Street.
Oh, all the way from Mill Street down?
All the way from Mill
Okay.
Street.
Oh, you're right, sorry, yeah. And all the way down to, around to Grandview then?
Yeah.
It was a huge orchard, I remember that, yes.
Oh, yeah, beautiful orchard up
And
there.
who took care of it?
The employees.
Employees?
Yeah.
And why did they have an orchard there? They have this huge factory, why did they have an orchard?
Well, that was E.J. Young's
Toy.
toy.
Mm-hmm.
And he loved to go out there in the orchard, and he loved to go and pick fruit right off the trees and eat it.
And that was, that there is something to say about that. What about the wooden buildings you talk about? Where were they and what were they for?
They were right by where the lake is. They're on the side
Tell
of
us where the lake is, in case they happen to fill it 50 years from now.
Well, back of the old hospital. The
And that's
lake.
gone now too, incidentally.
No,
Yeah.
well, that's
No, it's
the
gone.
old hospital, yeah.
Yeah, the old
But I mean, where they built onto it.
No, they leveled the old hospital.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Well, they had built onto it before.
Oh, yeah, right.
It was together. Well, from there, it went all the way back to Mill Street. And it went...
The pond.
The pond, and almost, well, it wasn't too far from Grandview.
Tell us what you remember about the Mat Shop Pond and evenings and kids and so forth.
We used to sneak in there and go swimming.
And you weren't allowed to, obviously.
No.
Did we ever have any fatalities or accidents there?
No, none.
How deep was the pond?
Oh, some of the places in there were, oh, well, at the deepest end, that would be down where the spillway was.
Yeah.
That was about 20-some feet.
20-some feet easily.
But
And
up back farther, it was only about,
anywhere from
zero to 6
yeah.
feet, 8 feet somewhere.
What about, tell us if you can, the composition of the water. I mean, it was spring water, spring fed.
Yeah.
Now, we usually see ponds that are just covered with algae and so forth.
Yeah.
Was this covered with algae?
Oh, no.
Not a bit of algae.
no.
Why?
Well, it was kept running all the
They
time.
kept running it all the time.
yeah.
And it was always fresh
Always-
water.
Well, it came all the way from,
River Styx.
no.
Where?
It come from up around by the cemetery, clear up north to,
Reimer Road?
no, just on this side of the 76.
Oh, from where the Hall Pond was?
Yeah.
And I thought the whole thing somewhere along the line emanated from River Styx, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, River
it
Styx
didn't.
had nothing to do with
Nothing,
that.
zero, okay.
Neither did Holmesbrook Creek.
Neither one of the two?
No.
This was a natural pond.
Yeah.
Temperature of the pond when you swam in it
Oh, about 70 degrees
in the summertime?
in the summertime.
What did you do in the wintertime on the pond?
We didn't go up there in the wintertime. We went down to the old salt works, had a pond. See, that was a good-sized pond down there, where the salt works used their water for their boilers.
But the salt works, not where the brine
No,
vats were.
no.
because that would not freeze, but you would skate on the...
Oh, yeah, skate. Oh, yeah, we had them real shoe skates, too.
Yes, the shoe skates. Right.
With a screw on.
Yeah.
So we got wise every time you put the screws on it. We instead of putting that on, we got an old pair of shoes. We drove nails through and pounded it up so the skates would fall off.
We're going to come back to that in a second, but I want to hear, before we run out of time today, I want to hear about your father's fishing prowess. And my recollection of your father would be on a Saturday morning going down State Street, or in an evening going down State, because he worked all the time. He never was idle. In his later years, he slowed down. But he worked at the match, didn't he?
Yep.
Yep, he worked at the match, and I would go by there, and the poor old fellow, he had to be, what, 80, how old was it when he died?
He was 73 when he died.
So, you know, to a younger person,
yeah.
He was much older, but
yeah.
That isn't too old for us anymore.
No.
But anyway, I would go by there, and Fisherman Nick would be, and everyone loved that name. And you called it out of respect. You didn't tease him about it, Fisherman Nick.
Oh, no. Well, he enjoyed that.
He'd be sitting there in his gnarled hands like this and be playing with some string, and before you knew it, there's this great big net coming out. Where did he learn to make nets, and did you learn that?
I didn't, but my brother did.
And there's a real art to it, isn't there?
Yes, it's a fisherman's knot. The more you pull the knot, the tighter it would get. It would not loosen. You couldn't put your fingers in between the holes in the net and pull it. The more you pull it, you just tighten it, and it didn't make the knots or the holes any bigger.
Where did your dad learn that? Probably in the old country.
Either that, or when he was in New Jersey for a while when he come to this country, and he used to fish in the ocean in a rowboat. Can you imagine that? Mm. So, but he wasn't afraid of the water.
Well, no. It was a good place to fish.
Yeah.
The water's a darn good place to fish. Tell us, John, if you will, how many nets, and did he sell them? Did he just do it for fun?
No, he sold them to a lot of people. Matter of fact, he had to make people ordered nets, different sizes and in length. They were landing nets and live nets, what he was making. Mm-hmm. And the landing nets, matter of fact, I can tell you a story of one of them. Bert McAllister went and had Dad made one.
Now, who's Bert McAllister?
He was from the match company.
Right. What did he do there? He's very important there.
He was a millwright boss.
Mm-hmm. He was the boss. He was a foreman in the millwright department.
Right.
Describe McAllister just a little bit.
Well, he was fisherman too.
Yeah.
And so he come down.
Athletic man.
Oh yeah. He was an athletic man, and he come down and wanted Dad to make him a net so he could go pike fishing up in Canada. Mm-hmm. And so he went and took a pool cue that one of the tips was broke off, mm-hmm. and being the millwright, he made it so he could take the net part, where the frame of the net, take it out, and then he could fold it up. It wouldn't be too much to handle. So he told my dad how long he wanted a net, because up there, them pike that they was getting, it was pretty good size. Well, my brother was only 5 years old at the time, and they made him crawl inside the net, and he'd hold it up and see if that was big enough for it. I can still see that. And so Dad told him, he says, Bert, he says, now, when you go up there fishing, do not leave this in your boat. Just leave it lay anywhere. So Bert went fishing, and the first day he was up there, some guy wanted to buy the net off of him. He said, it's not for sale. So Bert went out fishing, and he got caught in the rain. So he pulled his boat up on the shore and just left his stuff in the boat, and when he come out, the net was gone.
That was gone? Mm-hmm. Oh, your dad made some nets that were just pieces of of literature.
Oh yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, he wore a metal finger, or not metal, but a finger with leather. Mm-hmm. And he pulled that, and at times you could lay a match down in his finger here where he's pulling that twine that hard.
What was the twine made of? Do you remember?
Regular fishing twine.
But
It was net twine was what
net
they-
twine, but
yeah.
now we have synthetics, but what did they have those days?
Oh, I would say it would be more or less just, well, it wasn't cotton, it was something that was braided up.
Kind of a silk, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know that was silk, but I know that it was.
No, it wasn't silk, but it had probably
Yeah.
some of it in there where it was braided.
But it was just beautiful. That
Yeah.
was just a beautiful thing. At the time that I was working at the B&B store, we sold fishing equipment, and we had those little nets, and so forth. And Lou Ackerman, now dead, who was the owner,
Yeah.
one of the owners, would say, "You can tell the fisherman Nick did not make this net," because they were just.
Oh yeah, they were
just-
buddies.
Yeah, they're just absolutely great. Now, going back to your boyhood days then, tell us more, if you can, about the neighbors that you had and some of the people that you played with and so forth. Some are still living, but unfortunately many of them are gone.
Yeah.
Who are some of the ones you remember?
Well, I'll start from Pete Rodich's house going.
Okay, Pete Rodich's house.
Yeah. Well, Pete.
So Pete lived how many doors? Well, across the street.
Across the street.
Right across the street. But,
Caddy corner across the street.
Caddy corner across the street. That would be on the south side of 94. You
yeah.
were on the north side of
North
94,
side.
but it doesn't exactly go north
No.
to south. It kind of goes southwest
Yeah.
at that point.
And Pete, we always would have competition who was going to shine their car the best.
That was in later years, because in the earlier years, you probably didn't even have a car.
Well,
did you?
no, but still no, in later years. And then there was Pete, and there was Annie, and there was Pete's mother and dad. And they lived there. And then down the street from them, there was people by the name of, oh boy. Come on, John.
That's fine. You can read it. This is not a finished product. We just want to get the information. You can read as much as you want to, John.
I had a lot of the stuff.
While you're looking there, Pete Rodich. I had Ann Gavininsky,
Yeah.
who is his sister, in here one day, and she was telling us about where Pete worked all the time. But somewhere along the line, we missed one of those. Well, how about telling us where Pete worked? One of the
Well,
places
Pete worked at Forey Wright's Buick Garage first, and that's where he was the mechanic that when the first dual carburetors came out on the Buicks, he was the one that was doing the adjusting on them. He took me for a ride up 94 going towards Sharon Center doing 110 miles an hour, and the telephone poles were going like toothpicks past me.
What year would that have been?
Oh, that was about
Early 40s.
40s, yeah, early 40s.
Very early 40s. I think the dual carburetors came out
Yeah,
early to mid 40s.
yeah,
During the war, there were no cars made, right?
no.
Right.
But, yeah, we had some fun times together.
Yeah. Whom did you decide was the person that?
Stoffers.
Oh yes, of course, the Stoffers.
Stoffers was the next house to Rodich's. Then the next house to them was Bishop.
That's Elizabeth.
George and Elizabeth Bishop.
Elizabeth, and they had a daughter, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And that was the only daughter they had, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Nice person.
yeah,
Bishop, Bischoff.
right. And then next to them was Tab Mager.
Tab
Mager.
Yes, right. He had a couple brothers, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, but I didn't know them as well.
Jim, Sid, and
Sid, I remember.
George,
Yeah.
whom they called Mooney Maker, because he had one eye that was
Yeah.
drooping, so they called him Mooneye, and then that went from Mooneye to Mooney.
Yeah.
And he married Edna Mager.
Yeah. And then the next,
Edna Mager was born, I believe, in October of 1895, and she lived to be almost 100 years old.
and then the next house was, come on now, John. Gomer Francis.
Oh, Gomer Francis, right.
Yeah,
What did he do? Tell us about Gomer Francis and a little bit about him. He was a great person.
Yeah.
What did he do?
I don't remember what he'd done now. I mean,
Whom did he marry? He married
I don't remember who he
One of the
married.
Long girls, didn't he?
I think so. And then the next house, I don't remember who lived there, but the next house was Rose Lungai. And her husband then was Vince, I know it was well known. That's heck when you get old.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that everyone we have in this program is old, and we all have the same disease, age.
Oh, I know I had it wrote down, but I wrote so many of them down. Well, Kindig's moved into a house where Stoffers was.
Now, which Kindig would that be? That would be
Walter and
Walter and his wife, Fiscus.
yeah, but then his dad was there. His
dad
dad
was
was
there, too?
blind, and he was selling oil, Pennzoil,
Pennzoil. Mhm.
and he put it in the cars right there by his house. He had a little shanty out there.
And that's what he sold. That's where they did it.
Yeah. And then Walter's sister, she married Fishnick.
Bill Fishnick.
Bill Fishnick.
He
was
lived
a
out there in
boss.
Stadford, and he was a boss at the mat shop.
Mat
He had a
shop.
daughter, Nancy, who would probably now be close to 70 years of age. Had somewhat of a paralytic affliction. Nice girl. I went to school with her.
Yeah.
But Bill Fishnick was an F-I-S-C-H-N-E, what, C-K or K?
I think it's CK.
Yeah. But it's not F-I-S-H, it's I-F-S-C-H, Fishnick.
Well, I'm getting down here now. Turkovich was Rose and Vince Turk.
Yeah, Vince Turkovich. Okay, that's the Vince you're trying to think about, right?
Huh?
That's the Vince you're trying to think
Yeah.
of. Turkovich, yes.
And,
Yeah.
and then next to them was George Archer, and Jack Halvey lived there.
Jack Halvey, and Jack Halvey was always involved with automotives, wasn't he?
Yeah. And then there was Merton Overholt.
Now, this is not the same person as the Overholt and Freeborn.
No.
This
no.
is an other Overholt, not related whatsoever. And tell us about Mrs. Overholt, his wife.
He didn't have a wife.
Oh,
That was his mother and his sister.
his mother.
Mother and sister were living together.
I didn't realize that was his mother.
That was his mother and sister. And they would go to church, and you'd see Mert go first, and then the sister, and then the mother come up the street. They never all walked together.
Now, I'm 68 years old. I never realized that that was his mother.
Yeah.
God bless her, she was in good shape.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
was
my
down there.
heavens. Well, that's a new one on me.
Yeah, and then the next house was the Bowmans.
Which Bowman was that?
They called her Mom Bowman.
Oh, Mom Bowman. Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
And that was, well, there was, let's see, Lester, Clayton, Lloyd, Mary, Ralph Bowman, and Gladys Bowman.
That's a big family.
Yeah, and the next to them was the Cheneys.
Yeah, well, and this.
But don't ask me all of their names.
Oh, there are a lot of those. But Bill Cheney was a wee little man, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And no hair.
and his wife was big.
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of children.
Oh, yes.
And nice people too.
Oh, yeah.
I think that Bill Cheney was probably at his heaviest, maybe 110 pounds.
Yeah.
But worked every
Every day,
minute of the day in a steady way. He was a custodian at the high school and
Yeah.
just the nicest person in the world.
And then there was, well, I was going to tell you about George Archer. George Archer and Seeley worked for the water department.
Yes. When the water department was not really what it is today.
Oh, no, that was all pick and shovel.
You bet.
There was no backhoes.
No, there was nothing. They just did all that, and that was a lot of work.
It was.
Yeah. That's a tremendous amount of history that we have down there. Some people we haven't heard of before.
Well,
Go ahead. You have some more.
I was going to tell you about the Brennies.
Yes, that's right. Tell us about the Brennies.
see, Gaber Brenny, he was the one that had his leg cut off back of our house.
Let's spell that. B-E-R-E-Y-N-I, isn't
No,
it?
B-E-R-E-N-Y-I.
Okay, B-E-R-E-N-Y-I.
Y-I.
Okay, Brenny, okay.
And his grandma lived at the brick house at that time.
Tell us where the brick house, when you're talking about the brick house,
That's-
you're talking about the one on L Street, right?
Right, on L Street.
Give us a geographical location of the brick house. When everyone in our age group says brick house, we know what we're talking about. Tell us where that was, 'cause
Well,
it's no
it was
longer.
off of L Street between the main railroad tracks and the switch track coming past across State Street.
We go down State Street about, what, 1,000 feet or 500 feet?
Yeah,
Turn left onto L Street.
yeah,
You go up a very steep hill.
yeah.
Go straight over a railroad track,
Yeah.
go up another steep hill,
Yeah.
and go over a railroad track,
Yeah.
and somewhere in there was this brick house, which was inhabited by so many people. And
Oh, yes.
those railroad tracks became the graveyards for many transmissions, as people
Yeah.
try to go over them fast. And Grandma Brenny lived at the brick house. What was the brick house at that time?
It was they rented it. It was
Apartments.
apartments, yeah.
Were you ever in the brick house?
Oh, yes, many times.
What was it like?
Beautiful. I mean, it was,
At one time it was a
yeah.
showpiece, but
Yes.
unfortunately it fell to disuse. And
I can't remember who the Yoders.
the owners owned it.
The Yoders was the ones because they had in the stone. when
Yoder,
they-
right.
Yeah.
And then it fell into such disuse that even in later years, transients lived there.
Well, the colored people used to live there. William Thompson and his mother and Johnny, well, I don't know his last name now. But anyway, they lived up there. And we used to go up there barbecues when they had them outside. They used bed springs they put out there, and then they barbecue on top
On
of
the
that.
bed springs.
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff, though?
Oh, delicious. Man, I can still taste it.
Oh, that's great.
Well, anyway, the
Brennan.
grandmother, she lived up there. Well, the son and his wife lived on the corner of Rainbow Street.
Rainbow,
At the end of Rainbow Street, there was the railroad tracks, and then there was no more houses.
right. And he lived right at the very end of Rainbow
Rainbow
Street.
Street on the south side of the street.
Are there any houses on the north side of Rainbow?
Oh, yes.
Are there?
Oh, yes. Hells were living on the north side.
Right, you got that. I'd forgotten about that. The south side, we had several houses right in a row.
Yeah.
And I mean right in a row. I mean,
Yeah,
there was
they
not-
were all in a row.
about 5 feet
Well, see, the match company owned all them properties until the people start buying them.
by them. And Brenny's lived in the last house on the left-hand side,
Yeah.
which would be maybe 500 feet from Main Street,
Yeah.
easily.
And the boy used to go up to his grandmother's, and he'd come back on the railroad, went on the railroad tracks, on a switch track. And my sister,
Horrible accident.
yeah, and my sisters were sled riding down the hill, and he was watching them. And the switch engine was coasting backwards, and they never
saw it.
they didn't blow their whistle.
Well, they don't, when they
They had to blow their whistle just about the time they got to our coal shed. We had a coal shed out there, and that was where they were supposed to blow their whistle for the crossing. They didn't blow it. And he was standing, I don't know how he's standing over the track or somehow, and it knocked him down and cut his leg off. Well, my mother, she seen it from the house, because we had a window on the north side of the house there, and so she seen it, and she had an apron on, and she jumped went out of the house. We had steps going down to because we had a dip down in the back of our house, which isn't there anymore, but she went
the
across.
house is no longer there either, is it? The house is no longer there.
The house is no longer there. But we had a fence, chicken
wire.
Not, well, more or less like a hog fence. It had the big square. And we had a post there, and we could crawl across. My mother crawled across that post and picked that boy up. She had an apron on, and she picked him up, and my sister Mary carried his boot home. And they took him to the mother and dad. Well, the switch engine didn't even know that they run over him. And the one brother, he went up to the station and told them that they come right back down to see what happened. and we had more railroad people in our house than
I would imagine. Now that EMS didn't come,
oh no, we didn't have no EMS at that.
and ambulance didn't come either.
No.
How did you get him to the hospital?
I don't know how they got him.
There was no hospital.
Well, yeah, the hospital was there.
This is after 1920. Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
after 1921. You're right. Okay, the hospital. Did they take him to the hospital then?
Yeah, they took him to the hospital.
And he lived after that, didn't he?
Yeah, he lived after that. He moved to Indiana, and then he died. He's passed away, but I don't know where he passed away. Whether he passed away there, or I knew he had gone back to the old country. Now whether he passed
They were
away,
Hungarian.
yeah, Hungarian.
Oh,
And so then my mother come home, and here the blood was all over her apron.
Oh, boy.
And and the people were asking her, what'd she do, butcher a hog?
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't know that her apron was that bloody. And she just took the apron, wrapped it up, and took it off right away, because it was all full of blood where she carried him.
tell us a little about your mother. We know so much about Fisherman Nick, but tell us about your mother. She's a lovely, lovely, warm, gentle person.
Oh yeah, Mom always had a good word, and anybody that would come there
Got fed.
and ask for something to eat. That was during the Depression days when, well, they called them hobos, but they were just transients.
Right.
And they would come to the house and ask for something to eat. And if they asked for something to eat, my mother would give them something. Even if it was just a piece of bread, she'd give them something to eat. But they asked for money.
Nope.
Hit the road, Jack. That was it. But we had one time, this one fella came to the house, and Mom had a piece of veal steak that we had left over at that time. Well, of course, it wasn't as expensive as it is today.
Oh, surely not.
And she thought, well, it's left over. I'll just give it to him. And she buttered the bread and made a sandwich for him. He sat out on the back porch and almost wondered why was he taking the bread. He took the meat and took it off to the side. And Mom says, what's the matter with the meat? He says, lady, he says, I told God, as long as I beg for something to eat, I would not eat any meat.
Oh, bless his heart.
Yep, he wouldn't eat it.
Isn't that something? They had a real code of ethics too.
Yeah.
Those poor fellows. Those were horrible days, the Depression.
Oh, yeah.
Just horrible days.
And then my mother used to make her own soap for washing.
Tell us how we made soap in those days.
Well, they saved all the lard, all the grease that they could get.
From?
Hogs. And then they'd put it in cans. Mom had always cans that she'd put it in, the lard that she didn't use. And when she got so much of it, and then she went and made soap out of it.
With what? Lye?
Lye.
And how did you, do you remember how it was made?
Yeah, put it in a kettle and it was boiled. And then after it was boiled, we used to have these not orange, but grape boxes. And she put a cloth in there, in a grape box, so it wouldn't run out the sides. And put it in there and then let it dry. And then she cut
Cut it up.
it in pieces,
And it was good soap.
and it was good soap.
Good soap.
Well, this-
didn't smell good.
No, but anyway, this transient, he come up and asked my mother if she had soap. He wanted to wash his clothes. And he says, do you have any homemade soap? My mom says, yeah. He says, would you give me a bar of soap? Do you know, that's all that guy ever stopped at our house for, was a bar of soap, so he'd go down to the brickyard and wash his clothes and hang them up and dry out there.
Oh, it was a tough.
It was tough
you know.
times, yeah.
I can remember, and I've said this before in the program, but I can remember we lived very close to a railroad track, as you did too.
Yeah.
And you probably saw the same thing that I did. Joe Klosterman recounts this story so very, very well because he lived next to a railroad track as well.
Yeah, I know they did.
And every morning, of course no one's working, every morning you would see a line of people going along the railroad track picking up coal, and that's what it would fall off the cars and so forth. And usually not too many women, but the kids, if they were not in school, and the men, they would have their bucket. And I grew up, I was born right at the beginning of the Depression. I grew up thinking that this is what people did.
Yeah.
You get up in the morning, I did. I would get up in the morning, I would look out the south window, which was,
And you was hoping that there would be some more coal out there.
well, I didn't know about the coal part, but I knew that, I thought people were,
Yeah.
that's what they did. They went to work. I thought that they went to work, and that's what they did. They would stoop over. I didn't even know what they're picking up.
Yeah.
But this went on for years, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years.
I picked up many pieces of coal.
Did you? From a lot of people
On the
did.
switch track there, because they, see, Dick Bird had a tipple there right at Rainbow Street, just across the track. Had a tipple, and he unloaded coal there and would haul it to the homes. Through the match company,
Yeah.
he would haul the coal. And
And I didn't know who these people were, and of course, I don't know that my parents knew who they were, but I have heard since that many very, very fine and upstanding
Oh,
people
yeah.
within Wadsworth, that's why they would heat their houses in the winter.
yeah.
And of course-
Railroad ties, I cut up many a railroad
And
tie.
railroad
by hand.
ties also. They would throw the railroad ties away, they would cut them up, and they would burn them. John, we're going to run out of time. I have to hear so much more of your history here. Franklin School,
Yeah.
and who were some of the playmates there and with...
Oh, my gosh. Well, the Franklin School, I was a schoolboy patrol down
Oh,
there.
that's right. We have a picture of it, as a matter of fact. 1931. I'm going to hold this picture up, and I'm going to identify some really, really good people here. These were the patrol people from 1931. Bill Mager, Jack Fury, Billy Lester, Jack Jones, John Fillipi, Ken Razor, now dead,
Yeah.
Don Douglas, Leo Raker, Billy Kleckner, Bill's now dead too, Clayton Shotwell, John Lucas. Is Johnny still living?
I don't know. I heard
think
he
he-
was, and then I don't know.
I think he is. Jim Witchie, now dead. Dan Kale,
Yeah.
Ray Police, now dead. Lester Jenkins, James Price, Bill Matko, Ken Ryland, Elton Longnecker, Jack McLaughlin, Bob Mensch, Tommy English, Harry McKelvey, Alvin Light, and then we have Ed Transu, who is, of course, the supervisor, and there's Big Ed up there, and Maynard Porter, and Tom English. Floyd Hufftelling, I don't know that name, do you?
No, I didn't know.
Simon Garshman,
His dad had the junkyard on
yeah.
L Street, and
Right. John was, they moved away then, they went to New York or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
But that is something. And there's Ray Police, he looks just like himself right now. Of course, he's died a few years back. But that's a picture to behold. Tell us a little bit more about the early days at Franklin School.
Oh, well, at Franklin School, there was, well, I'd tell you the teachers down there that I had was Nicodemus was a first grade
Which
teacher.
one? There were about 10 of them.
Well, I don't remember what her first name was. All I know is Mrs. Nicodemus or Miss
What,
Nicodemus.
is it possible there was Roselle? No, Roselle was married to a Nicodemus. I'm sorry. I'm trying to think of which Nicodemus. There were several of them who were teachers.
Yeah, there was quite a few of them that they had teachers. And, oh, there was a lot of them, but, and then, let's see. I got it here. Where in the heck? Keeler was the principal. Doty was the fifth grade teacher. And Miss Venner was the music teacher.
Music teacher.
And, where you got it, John? I should have, I know I had him. Oh, Sample,
Mary Sample,
yeah, and Ringer.
Mrs. Ringer, Elsie Ringer. John, do you remember Vince Felix?
Yes, the Felix boys?
Yes, Felix boys. Vince is still alive. He's about 90-some years old now. So he was born in 1910, so he'd be 90,
Roy,
90
Felix.
Roy, Roy and Vince and Irv. He was the first person to go into Franklin School in 1915 when it was first opened.
I'll be darned.
And I want so badly to get Vince on the program. I'm going to try my best to get him. I've been trying to get them through people because you must, well, you're one of them. I spend 10 times more effort trying to get people on the program than in interviewing them.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. And some of these people just have so much so. If, as people see Vince Felix, I want them to go and tell him, now, when Caesar calls you, you say yes.
Yeah.
So don't spend so much time. High school days, Wadsworth High School.
Yeah.
And you graduated, what, 1930?
No, I didn't graduate. I didn't graduate because my mother passed away, and my dad said I had to stay home.
Mm-hmm. And she passed away in the early 30s, didn't she?
Yeah.
Or mid-30s?
Yeah.
What year was it?
34.
34, yeah. So you probably left school somewhere in the 34, right?
Well, it was, yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere close to 34. Mat shop?
Yeah.
Which
18 years I spent
Which
there.
was the place everyone worked in Wadsworth.
If they could get a job.
If you can get a job, because it was steady.
Yeah.
Not too much money. What was your first?
35 cents an
35
hour.
cents an hour. Wow. And you were lucky to get it.
Oh, yes.
Darn lucky to get it. What
Yes.
did you do, and with whom did you work?
Oh, I worked all over there. I worked in almost every department, out in the yard gang and everything else.
Who were some of the people?
Well, let's see. There was Elmer Brubaker.
Elmer Brubaker, right?
Yeah.
Now that's the old Elmer.
Yeah.
He has a son, Elmer, also, who is
Yeah.
72 years old now.
Yeah. Earl Boffman.
Earl Boffman, yes.
Yeah.
He married Betty Long, didn't he?
Yeah. Merle Swartz.
Merle Swartz?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Nicodemus.
Which one?
That was the old man.
Oh, Oscar?
Yeah.
He worked there then? I thought he always had the gas
Yes,
station.
he had the gas station too.
Oh, he did both.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was Frank Sinks.
Frank Sinks,
Yeah,
yes.
he was the chemist.
Right, Bill Sinks was the son.
Yeah. And Elmer Brubaker.
Yeah, we had Belmer.
Yeah, I had that one. And Bert Proper.
Bert Proper, he
Yeah.
had Margaret Proper as his daughter.
Yeah. He was in the stick match.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice guy.
Well, him and my dad used to go fishing together.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And Bill Fishnick.
Bill Fishnick, right?
Yeah. And then there was Kaufman and E.J. Young that I knew.
You know,
Kaufman was the employee.
he was the head manager, wasn't
Yeah.
he? And then E.J. Young, of course, was the top man. You worked there for 18 years.
18 years.
And then what did you, after 18 years, from 1934 to what, 1952, 54, what did you do then?
Then I went in the insurance business.
Went into the insurance business. What a jump.
Yeah.
And what was the name of the insurance business?
National Life and Accident Insurance Company, Grand Ole Opry.
Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
Let's see. And
They
how long
own-
were you with that?
9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
And you enjoyed that?
I enjoyed it. Then I had a accident where I had whiplash and I couldn't
Wow.
take it anymore.
Did the insurance company treat you well?
Oh yeah.
Of course it would. Marriage.
Well, my first wife was Raphael Sabatella. She was from Utica, New York.
And how did you meet Raphael?
When I was in the service.
Service.
Went to a birthday party and that's how I met her.
She died of cancer.
Yeah.
What, 1950?
50. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful girl, and I remember her very well. Nice voice, beautiful
Yeah.
singing voice. And when she was shown at the funeral home, unrecognizable. Unrecognizable. You had one child with
Yeah.
Rachel.
That was
And who
John.
was that?
John Jr.
John Jr. And where's John now? He would be, what, 50-some years old?
Yeah. And he's in
Almost 50 years old.
Yeah. And he's in Seattle, Washington, working for Boeing Aircraft.
Ah, what does he do for Boeing?
Oh, he's in the computer, in the parts, where they put the parts together for the...
I heard someone say the other day, I hear a lot of people talk on your program about being in computers. Isn't everybody?
Not everybody.
I said, well, no, not everybody. He said, well, do you have a microwave at home? I said, well, you're into computers. Do you have a battery watch? You're into computers. I guess everyone's into computers, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Those of us who punch microwave things don't know too much about it. Then after she died...
Well, then I married
Esther Smeraldo.
Esther Smeraldo.
Stayed with the Italians, I see.
Yeah. And then had 2 boys,
And who were they?
Mike and Jim.
Tell us a little bit. And Mike, unfortunately, had a horrible accident.
Mike went with the insurance man that oh gosh, I can't remember what his name was now. But they went hunting at Chippewa Lake, and they crippled a duck, and Mike would, if any time he was hunting, if he crippled an animal, he'd hunt it down, and if he couldn't find it, why. But they went out in a boat, and this 14-year-old boy, he was retrieving the duck that they had got, and he had his hand on the gun and triggered the gun and shot him in the back.
I remember that day very well. Just horrible. And then Jim.
And then Jim, he worked for your brother.
Yes, and an outstanding mechanic.
Yeah.
Outstanding mechanic. And I don't know how many times I think to myself, Jim, I need to ask you a question. Hank's dead. Tell me how to do this. But of course, Jim is going into another career now, rather than spinning wrenches, as he says. So we're pleased with that. Then that's at the extent of the children.
Yeah.
And then you are married now to?
I got a catch in my throat. Zerillo.
Zerillo.
Yeah.
That happens to all of us, no problem. Now, as we go through all of these wonderful things that have happened.
Margarita.
Margarita.
I was trying to think Margaret, and that is no.
Margarita Zerillo, right.
Yeah.
And she's Italian too.
Yeah.
You just stay with those Italians all the time. John, as we go through this this wonderful life that you've led here in Wadsworth and recount the things that you have done which have helped make Wadsworth what it is, you know, every little bit, every little brick makes part of Wadsworth what it is. What are some of the things that you would like to share that we haven't asked you about? Because you have such good memories, and you've never lived anywhere else really, except the 2 years in the 4 years in the Army.
4 years.
4 years
Well,
in the
3
Army.
years and 9 months in the Army.
We always, I always say that I've never lived anywhere except Wadsworth, and then when people say, well, didn't you live in, yeah, well, yes, but I don't count that because I didn't choose to live in the Army. I was sent away for 2 years. I enjoyed it. I enjoy everything that I do, but I enjoyed that, and my brother Hank and I were born on the same property. We lived there all of our lives.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep, we lived all of our lives, and he never moved an inch from the property.
Yeah.
And he died on the property, and he was physically born on the property. I was physically born on the property, and I, 10 years or a couple of years ago, we moved 500 feet. So
you moved way far away, didn't you?
Far away. So I can appreciate the fact that you have never been out of Wadsworth either, and that's 81 years.
Yeah.
So what memories do you have that you'd like to share? We have about a minute left, and if you can share that with us, we would appreciate it.
Well, there's a lot of things that I could tell you about Wadsworth that I haven't even scratched the surface.
Well, maybe we can have you back again if you'd like to scratch the surface. We need to have as much information as we possibly can. John, tell us quickly, one quick thing here. Who was your last boss at the match, and what did you do at the match at the very last?
I was in the printing department.
I wanted to hear you say that because who was in the printing department with you? Who was the boss at the time? I want to hear a little bit about him.
Marty Bose.
Marty Bose,
Yeah.
right, Marty Bose. Marty Bose's father, Marty Bose's wife was on our program, Mary Pecknick Bose. And so was his son, Bose. Charlie Bose.
Charlie.
Jim's gone, unfortunately. Charlie Bose, who at that time had just spent 30 years as a fireman in Wadsworth, and he retired and got the key to the city and all of that. And tell us very quickly a little bit about Charlie and his administrative ability. I'm sorry, about Marty.
Oh, Marty was a good Joe anyway. He had a lot of fun. Marty Bose, and well, being that we Jim Battisi.
Jim Battisi, another Hungarian fellow.
Yeah, and we used to get all together we had some good times together.
Johnny, we're going to have you come back because you just mentioned another great big avenue here, Jim Battiste and all of those kinds of people.
Yeah.
So we're going to have you back again. But for the time being, we're going to have to say goodbye at this point because we are at the end of the hour. I want to thank you for coming and start writing down even more of the memories because 81 years is a long time for good memories. And boy, do you have a good memory. And that's wonderful. Thanks again, John. We appreciate your coming.
Yeah.